So now we just need to use that sauce that we made up, and we're going to give them a good coating of the sauce. Look at that. That is juicy as, and they're just falling apart. But it is literally just falling off the bone. It is incredibly tender. G'day, I'm Schuey. Welcome to Smoked Barbecue Sauce, where we want to help you improve your barbecue game. Today, I'm going to be smoking pork ribs using the 3-2-1 method. Now, if you've never used the 3-2-1 method with cooking ribs, it takes the guesswork out of it. What it actually essentially breaks down to is 3 hours of smoking your ribs, 2 hours wrapped in foil, and 1 hour with a glaze on top. That's it. Ribs are one of the most popular foods to barbecue, so let's get into it. That's right, I'm going to be smoking pork ribs using the 3-2-1 method. But firstly, we're going to need some ribs. So I went to have a chat with my local butcher because here in Australia, our pork ribs tend to be quite small. And if I try and cook them using the 3-2-1 method, they're just not going to be any good. They're going to overcook. So I needed to source a big rack of ribs. And luckily for me, my butcher was able to get me this large rack of ribs, well, for Australia anyway, weighing in at 9.5 pounds. Now the trim could have gone 2 ways with these. The fact is, if there was a little bit more of the flap left on here, I'd probably trim them down and make them St. Louis cut. But I think we'll just leave them pretty much as is. And I'm not going to trim them down and neaten them up to make them St. Louis. I'm just going to cook them as spare ribs. And also, it seems weird for me to ask for a large rack of ribs and then to trim off so much. Now, I will be removing this membrane that's on the back of the bones here. It's easy enough. Just start it off by getting a butter knife under the corner. And because this is quite slippery and you can't get a hold, use a little piece of paper towel, and that usually gives you enough grip that you can rip it off. Like that. Now I'll just flip it over, and look, any little daggy bits like that I will trim off. And I think I might just take a little more of this top fat off. Not a lot. This rack's pretty good, but I will just, as I said, just shave a little bit of this fat off. And that's about all I'm going to take off. Just flip it over, just check if there's any little daggy bits, little bits like that. They will dry up during the cook, so you may as well just get rid of them. Now for some pork rub. Now I'm going with our tried and tested sweet rub. You can use any pork rub that you like, and if you want to use ours, check out the link in the description to the website. Into a bowl, I'll put 8 tablespoons of smoked paprika, 6 tablespoons of brown sugar, 3 tablespoons of kosher salt, 2 tablespoons of black pepper, 1 tablespoon of ground cumin, 1 tablespoon of mustard powder, 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, 1 tablespoon of onion powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Mix this up really good and then transfer it to a rub shaker. How easy was that? Nearly as easy as liking this video. Now, I do not tend to use any binders on my pork. Reason being is, once you put the dry rub on there, the pork tends to sweat and that dry rub's actually going to turn into a glaze. Just apply it from roughly about 12 inches above your meat. That just allows all the particles in the rub shaker to separate before they hit the protein. And you try to make sure all of it gets a nice even coverage. Now we can just place this aside while we get our smoker ready. Today I'll be using the 22-inch Weber Smoky Mountain, and I'm going to be setting up to smoke at 225 degrees Fahrenheit. And how I'll do that is by filling the charcoal ring with briquettes, leaving it well to put some lit fuel into. I'll then 3/4 fill a chimney starter with briquettes, light that up. Once they're all ashed over, I'll dump them into that well we created. I'll then add a couple of chunks of cherry and apple wood because they pair really well with pork. I'll pop the grill on and an ambient temp probe, and I'll pop the lid on, opening all the vents wide open. And as we start getting to our target temp, I'll start closing down our bowl vents to stabilize that temp we want of 225 Fahrenheit. The temp in our smoker is finally stable, so we can get this massive set of ribs in the smoker. Just place them on the top rack, put the lid on. I might check them in about 2 hours, but we're going to leave them cooking away like that, uncovered, for 3. The ribs have been smoking away for 2 hours now, so I want to just give them a bit of a check over and just make sure none of the edges are drying out, and if they need it, I'm going to give them a bit of a spritz. And in my spritz is just a 50-50 mix of water and apple cider vinegar. We're starting to get some really nice colour. Some of the edges are just a bit dry, there's a little bit of pooling, so I will just give it a little bit of a spritz. So we'll just put the lid back on and let them ride out the last hour of the smoking process. Our ribs have been smoking away for 3 hours now, so it's time to get them off the smoker and put them on some foil that has some brown sugar, some honey, butter and apple cider vinegar laid out on top of it. And then on the top we want to do the same, just put some brown sugar, drizzle some honey, add some butter and wrap that up. Now wrap it up nice and tight. You want to squeeze out as much air as possible, and these can go back on the smoker for 2 hours. Put the lid back on, set a timer, grab yourself a drink. We'll be wanting some barbecue sauce for these ribs, and I want to use our recipe. And just like the rub, there's a link in the description to the website for all the ingredients and how to. Into a thick base saucepan, I'm going to put 1 cup of ketchup, 1.5 cups of apple juice, 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar, 1/2 cup of brown sugar, 4 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. Oh, geez, that was a mouthful. 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 3 teaspoons of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, and for a little kick, 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. And stir this over a low to medium heat for about 15 minutes until it all thickens up. All right, that's enough. Just take it off the heat and we're going to let it cool down. Okay, our sauce has cooled down enough, so I'm going to transfer it into a sauce bottle just to make it easier to use a little bit later on. So all we want to do is carefully pour it in. Okay, our ribs have been in the smoker wrapped up with the sugar, the honey, the butter, the apple cider vinegar for 2 hours now, so it's time to get them off. Okay, so we need to open up the foil and see what we have. It's looking pretty good and it is smelling fantastic. And they are quite tender. And we need to flip them over. Oh, they are super tender. So now we just need to use that sauce that we made up, and we're going to give them a good coating of the sauce. Just brush it on all the little bits that didn't get any. So now all we have to do is get these back in the smoker for their last hour with the glaze on. Straight back on the smoker, just like that. Surely by now you've subscribed to the channel, and while you're there, hit that bell button. That bell button is going to give you a notification every time we upload new videos. So our ribs have been cooking away for 6 hours now. It is time to get them off the heat. I find by placing some sauce down on the chopping board, so we can place the ribs meat side down, this just helps a little bit. Pick the ribs up and meat side down, and it's purely so we can see the bones and we know where to cut. We've got plenty of pull back there, so now we just know where to cut. Look at that, that is juicy as, and they're just falling apart. Like, that is fall off the bone pork. I'm not waiting any longer, I'm going in for a taste test. Wow, that rub, that sauce, and the pork is so tender. It is literally just falling off the bone. It is incredibly tender. Now, if you'd like to check this recipe out a little further, there is a link in the description to the website that has a wealth of barbecue knowledge. As always, cheers.